Kenya, once lauded as a haven of peace and stability and a model of democracy, disintegrated into mayhem and destruction of unprecedented scale following the disputed general elections of December 2007. Its magnitude had the potential of threatening the very existence of Kenya as a nation, with over 1,000 Kenyans losing their lives and over 350,000 displaced from their farms and homes in several regions of the country. Salvation for Kenya was to come from international pressure spearheaded by the African Union, whose panel of eminent African personalities, led by former UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan, steered a stormy mediation process. The mediation panel, or the Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation Team, agreed on 4 set agenda. Agenda Item 1 was to end violence and restore fundamental rights. Agenda Item 2, addressing the humanitarian crisis and promoting healing and reconciliation. Agenda Item 3 on power sharing, which was agreed upon as a means of ending the political crisis. Agenda Item 4 on addressing long-standing issues including constitutional, legal and institutional reforms, land reforms, tackling youth unemployment, tackling poverty, inequity and regional development imbalances, consolidating national unity and cohesion, and addressing impunity, transparency and accountability. As it has turned out, it is now painfully aware to every Kenyan that Agenda Item 4 is the most critical pillar on whose foundation lies the stability of this country. The implementation of Agenda 4 is no doubt going to be the benchmark for gauging the achievement of any post-2007 government. But what really does Agenda Item 4 entail?
Agenda Item 4 basically covers those reforms that the Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation Team agreed on to be implemented as part of the peace deal that was signed on 28 February 2008. And broadly, these reforms covered constitution, judiciary, police, parliament, the civil service, land, national cohesion, accountability, transparency and impunity, and lastly, the reforms covered unemployment, particularly among the youth, and regional imbalances.
The fact that Agenda Item 4 is central to the future of Kenya as a united nation cannot be overstated, and thus the need to keep Kenyans focused on the goal of the National Accord. There is a real need to regularly and faithfully track or monitor progress being made in implementing action points on each agenda item. Agenda Yetu platform is such a forum. Through its strengthening democratic governance using ICT initiative, the project is focusing on how the country's long-standing issues are being addressed and giving Kenyans a unique and interactive forum to track the progress on these important national issues and create a healthy national discussion on this using various ICT tools.
Agenda Yetu platform came as a result of a realization that citizens need to put pressure on the politicians to deliver on this Agenda 4 items before the next election. But we also realized that it is not very easy to kind of get everybody putting pressure. So what we have done is to create a platform, to create what we call a virtual open space, where ordinary Kenyans using either mobile phones through SMS or using email or on Facebook or on Twitter or YouTube could be able to communicate with the policymakers using this Agenda Yetu platform.
Let's take a look at issues at the heart of Agenda Item 4. The focus of our Agenda Yetu platform and find out if there's any progress being made in the implementation of these important national issues. Constitutional reform in Kenya has been a highly emotive issue since the country gained independence. Today, constitutional reforms remain a top priority in securing a harmonious nation. It is also the core of implementing Agenda Item 4. There is no doubt that a new constitution is critical for guaranteeing the stability and prosperity of Kenya. The panel of eminent African personalities underscored a greater urgency in constitutional change to anchor key reforms in Kenya, and as a sign of progress towards a new constitution, a referendum on the proposed constitution is slated for August 4th, 2010. In Kenya, as in many other African countries, land is considered the most important natural resource required for the creation of wealth. Land has been and will continue to be the mainstay of Kenya's economy, where over 80% of its population derives its livelihood from agriculture. Therefore, its ownership, allocation, distribution and utilization are of great concern to most Kenyans. Land has also been a major source of ethnic-related conflicts. These conflicts arise from perceptions by many Kenyans that the current land ownership system is unjust, with many citing historical injustices. Land ownership has been an emotive issue right from the colonial period to the present time. It is a matter that needs to be addressed satisfactorily for a harmonious society. The National Land Policy was approved by the Cabinet and passed in Parliament. However, its implementation is yet to start. The Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation process prioritized a number of steps to reform the judiciary. They include constitutional review to anchor judicial reforms, including financial independence, transparent and merit-based appointment, discipline and removal of judges, strong commitment to human rights, and reconstitution of the Judicial Service Commission. No substantive policy and institutional reforms have taken place in the judiciary since 2008, and the expected reforms are based on a new constitution. The proposed new constitution contains a number of judicial reforms, and it is expected that far-reaching reforms will be undertaken once the new constitution comes into effect. Security is a basic human right. As a country, we regard security as a matter of national priority. A fully functioning police service is vital for maintenance of peace, provision of security, and enforcement of the law. Kenya's transition and prospects of development to a great extent hinge on the country's ability to guarantee security to each of its citizens. Although comprehensive police reforms largely hinge on a new constitution, a few initiatives have been undertaken in line with the Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation process to reform the police. These include a Police Reforms Implementation Committee that was formed to implement the Ransley Report that is expected to have far-reaching effects on the police force as an institution. Reforming the way Parliament does business is another key milestone aimed at enhancing the quality of parliamentary debates and hence the effectiveness of the institution. The mediation team prioritized certain steps to be undertaken to reform Parliament. These include comprehensive review of parliamentary standing orders and procedures to enrich the quality and output of debates and strengthen multi-party democracy. Introduction of live coverage of parliamentary proceedings and electronic voting. With the new standing orders providing for far-reaching reforms of the August House, it is hoped that legislators will take up the challenge of fulfilling their obligations to improve the lawmaking process as well as other oversight duties. Civil service reform has been prioritized as a key aspect of addressing long-standing issues afflicting Kenyans. The Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation process outlined a number of steps pertinent in reforming the civil service. These include to continue with ongoing administrative and financial reforms, results-based management and performance contracting to cover all persons paid by public funds. Although much of the civil service reforms largely hinge on a new constitution, some steps are being undertaken to reform the civil service. Like other long-standing issues in Agenda Item 4, this may require a new constitution and comprehensive policy directions, but a number of interventions are being undertaken to tackle poverty, inequality, and development imbalances. These include the creation of the Ministry of Development of Northern Kenya and other arid lands with a view to addressing the development challenges facing Northern Kenya and other arid lands. Increase in budgetary allocation for the Constituency Development Fund. The prioritization of tackling poverty, inequality, and addressing regional imbalances in Kenya's Vision 2030 strategy. Nevertheless, high poverty levels, inequality, and regional development imbalances persist. The KNDR generally agreed that unemployment in the country, particularly among the youth, is a serious concern that must urgently be addressed. It acknowledged that the lack of effective opportunities that integrate the majority of Kenya's youth into mainstream economic activities contributed to the destructive role played by the youth during the post-election violence. In recognition of this fact, the mediation process prioritized certain steps aimed at creating employment for the youth. These include generating an average of 740,000 new jobs each year from 2008 to 2012, increasing youth enterprise and development funds, and putting in place mechanisms for easier access to credit and collateral. A number of initiatives have been implemented to address this problem since the formation of the Grand Coalition government. These include the launch of the Kazi kwa Vijana program and the Youth Enterprise. Still, many youth in the country are yet to benefit from these programs. The National Accord prioritized fostering increased transparency and accountability in the management of public affairs as one of the long-standing issues in Kenya. The steps recommended to achieve this objective include strengthening the policy, legal and institutional framework for increased public transparency and accountability, anti-corruption, ethics and integrity, undertaking programs to support improved prosecution and adjudication of corruption and economic crimes, enhancing capacity and performance in investigations and asset tracing. But threats to human rights defenders, victims and witnesses, and politicization and ethnicization of criminal accountability still remain issues of great concern. The mediation process prioritized consolidating national cohesion and unity and outlined steps pertinent in attaining this. These include enactment of the National Cohesion and Integration Law, Parliament and executive initiating and sustaining advocacy on ethnic and racial harmony, introduction of the Hate Speech Offences Law, and reviewing the Media Act to control incitement attempts. Today, the country has established the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission, and enacted the Kenya Communications Amendment Act that was signed into law in December 2008. Several top politicians have also been charged for hate speech-related offences during campaigning for the referendum. All these are achievements that Kenyans aspire to attain, but to that, the government must play its role. The biggest challenge we face today is our ability as Kenyans to heighten civic vigilance, to demand and sustain agitation for comprehensive reforms that will make us a peaceful, respected, and prosperous nation. Be part of this agenda. Join us now on our platform at www.agendayetu.org and lend your voice to this important national discussion.